Well, welcome back. We're so delighted to have Joni Parsley with us today, and we have requested that Miss Ashton join her, which is Rod and Joni's oldest child, their daughter. And so please join Joni and me as we welcome Joni and Ashton to the program. Are you surprised that Ashton's volunteering? Well, not volunteering. Maybe she feels drafted, but she's willingly coming up here.
I actually got very relieved when I knew she was coming. So
we make a good team.
She's much better at this than I am. She's more like her dad. So.
Okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about Joni. She says that she's not silk and satin. She is flannel and fleece. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm just not fancy. I'm just me. I'm country girl, and that's the simple life is what I like. And so I just always said that flannel and fleece, not silk and satin, not anything fancy.
And I need to be educated because I understand you like to collect Longaberger baskets. What in the world is a Longaberger basket?
Well, if you're from Ohio, that's where they're made. So my sisters and I just started collecting these baskets. They're handcrafted, and it's just something that I don't know how long ago I started, but it's been many years, and I have way too many, and my husband always says that and counts them. So, but it's just something my sisters and I do together. So it's just
now, Ashton, I have heard your dad talk about this story, and I want to hear your viewpoint, and then we're going to let your mother explain.
Okay.
But that your dad and your mother dated for 7 years,
Yes.
and he called it the tribulation.
Tribulation.
Why in the world did it take you, Pastor Rod, 7 years to reel in Joni? What's the commitment issues here?
Well, I think maybe it might have had something to do with the fact that he was just starting out in ministry. And, you know, Miss Joni is certainly, oh, well, she said to call her mom.
in church she always does that.
Yeah, I try to use the official titles, but you know, to be honest, I really don't know what took him so long. Certainly, I would have, if I were he, I would have snatched her up as quickly as I could have.
There you go.
But they were able to grow together in ministry at that time, so I think it was a great moment for them to really build a foundation for the church and in their relationship. And then he jokes and says that when they finally went on their honeymoon, it was like the rapture.
Yeah. All right, so Joni, what is your viewpoint on that? 7 years.
Well, I played hard to get, I guess. So no, I just think it was, I tell the single people at our church that I think it's important that you become a complete person before you get married, that seeking to be married is not the answer. It's a really neat line to say you complete me from a movie, but really God's the only person that can complete you. So it's important to be a whole person, and I really just was seeking to be whole in the Lord, and then I knew I could offer something in marriage if I did that. So, and now I understand that time of preparation was really important because I spent a lot of time alone as a wife of a minister who travels a lot. So it helped me not to become a needy wife, a needy, woman, which is not something I'm real fond of. So,
well, we of course have always loved Rod and Joni for many, many years. And Ashton, I know you can speak to the fact of what an incredible mom and wife that she is. And I know Rod has bragged on you so much, Joni, as far as your ability to write and share your thoughts on paper, especially. So we're going to talk about your book, but Ashton, what would you say about this incredible woman of God sitting next to you?
Well, I'm just so proud of her because writing the book was a lifelong dream realized and truly a miracle. And Miss Joni, or excuse me, Mom, she always says that even though she's a pastor's wife and the first lady of our church, that she would always be a mom first. And I can sit here now as a grown-up and say that truly is her most favorite title and her best role. She's taught me so much, and I'd like to think I have the best of both parents.
Yes.
But definitely a love for writing and for literature and all things books comes from my mother, and she's instilled that in my brother as well, and he's very gifted as a writer and loves to read. And so I'm just thrilled that she's been able to, and God opened up the door for her to have this book published, and it's been such a blessing to me.
So, Joni, tell us, why did you write the book, and what does that title mean to you, Tapestry of Faith?
Well, the title really talks about what in life there are so many different stories that make up our life and so many seasons. And a tapestry, it just came to me one day. I was in our conference room, which you've been in our church, and we have these large tapestries, and I get bored at some of those long meetings, so I was just looking at this tapestry, and I was noticing that it really told a story. And but if you've ever done needlework, on the opposite side of a tapestry is always not so pretty. It's knots and threads are hanging and so forth, and that's really what life is like. It's a tapestry. It's creating a story, but it doesn't always look so beautiful. And so there's always the peaks and the valleys and the mountaintops and yet, you know, great struggles and challenges along the way. So I really set out to write something from my blog, which I started quite honestly at a time in my life, which was when my daughter packed up for college. It was just a seminal moment, and it was just, I saw that one season was coming to an end, and it was okay, what now? So I decided to process that a little more through writing, and just started this blog, and the book was sort of an outgrowth of that. But I just felt that it was important for me to be very transparent and very candid and real. That so many times people look at ministers or their wives and think their lives are perfect and they get special privileges from God or something. And Rod always says we're anointed to preach it, but not anointed to live it. So it was just important for me to be very relatable and write about not all the great victories, but some of the very great struggles. And then just some of what's, you know, just a typical, very mundane day, but God's in the everydayness of our life.
Amen.
Well, share, if you would, Joni, maybe one of the stories that you share in the book. I know there's so many that stand out, but I love the fact that you are transparent and relatable. I know those of you that are watching, that's really what encourages you more than anything. When even those of us that are in ministry, you know, can say, hey, you know, we've gone through this or we've gone through that. And to be honest about that, it really gives them hope to know that the same God who works in our life can work in their lives.
Right, absolutely.
That's good.
Right, just, I mean, any of the stories really that I talk about, but I would probably say some of the more difficult moments have been as a result of some of the struggles that we've gone through with our son, who was, and I find it just really the divine providence of God that I'm here on National and World Autism Awareness Day, and I appreciate so much that you did that spot that brought, you know, awareness to such a cause. But you know, some of the darker moments have been watching him struggle, and though he's defied the odds of all of the medical and doctor reports that we have had over the years, still watching your child struggle is one of the most painful things that we can go through as parents. But knowing that every road we've traveled down, God's gone before us, and he has watched his own son struggle and agonize. And I think the story in the book called Unbroken is probably the most significant in terms of dealing with something that's so agonizing and feeling so completely alone and not knowing what to do. And I say in that, though I've been through so many things in the darkest of hours and watching my son struggle, and I remember when he was going through this, he was just having a very difficult moment, but he said, "Sweet Father, please help me." And I just remember just losing all composure, thinking, to know God on that level, to say, even in your worst moments, "Sweet Father, please help me," was just a testament to me that no matter what is broken, hope is never broken.
Yes.
Yeah.
That hope is what I hope that the message, if there's a message in this book, it's a message of hope, that no matter what we're going through, that hope makes every step of faith possible. And I think that story is probably the one I would emphasize the most because of that, because people go through very dark situations where you wonder, where is God and why isn't he answering my prayer?
Yes.
And yet he is. It just doesn't look like the answer that we're wanting at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's just that was just one of the, I think, and I'm just very thankful that today the world is looking at this condition that is 1 in 68 children now. The CDC just released.
My goodness.
Those statistics. And I was thinking as I was reading that if any other disease had 1 in 68 people affected, it would be getting a great deal of attention. So I'm really grateful that America and the world is looking today to this.
All right, so Joni, tell us, first of all, what autism is, because there's a lot of us that are ignorant about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then secondly, tell us about Austen, how this affected him as a little boy, but yet now how he is, because it really is quite miraculous.
Yes. Well, he was diagnosed at age 3, and autism is a neurological condition that affects a part of the brain, and it normally affects speech development, social impairment. There's dietary restrictions usually. It's just the ability to focus is also impaired. So it's and the difference with autism is that it's a spectrum disorder. So there are kids that are affected on the low end where going through a day is extremely difficult, and yet then there's the high functioning, which is like an Asperger's syndrome, which our son was diagnosed with. And they can certainly go through a day, but there's challenges throughout that day, the social challenges. There's sensory difficulties where noise and sounds and tastes and textures and things can really send them into a meltdown. So the worst part of a parent going through that is they will hear a doctor say there is no treatment and there is no cure. And our particular doctor at the time said there was no hope, but we knew differently because we knew our hope wasn't built in any type of medical profession. Our hope was built on nothing less but Jesus Christ. So what's so important that what awareness is bringing is that there needs to be funding for more research, because the treatments that are out there are very symptomatic. So what works for one child won't possibly work for another child. That's why the national emblem, or the emblem, is a puzzle, because it's just one piece. You're just finding a piece to every puzzle of this whole situation to see what works for your child. And so there's this great networking of parents always talking, and we're sharing information of, well, this worked for mine and I might try it, but it didn't work. But in Austen's case, when he stopped, a lot of times they will stop talking, and he lost his language at about 16 months, and we thought it was to do with his hearing and had him tested. We had tubes and thought that was the answer. And then things began to he just began, to go backwards, basically. And so his development was delayed, and so we were told to take him to a specialist, and we did. And when that diagnosis came, it was devastating, of course. But they gave us what we call the never, never list, all of the things he would never do. He would never speak. He would never know we were his parents. He would never go to school. He would never be able to hold a job. He would never understand anything abstract. And that was one of the things that really hurt us the most, because God is a very abstract thought. If you if you really think about it, it's a very abstract thing to understand that there's a God and a heaven, and there's salvation, and there's an eternity, and that really was one of the things that broke our hearts. But we certainly wanted an instant miracle, and we learned from Dr. Kenneth Hagin a long time ago in a book that some miracles are instant and some are progressive. And so Austen's miracle has been progressive. And so step by step, piece by piece, what the Lord's direction to us was to take every earthly resource and mix with every heavenly resource that we had. And so that's what we did. I threw myself into research, and back in the early 90s, there was very little. Now there's a plethora of information available to parents, and thank God for the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have that. I was in a library digging through shelves back in the olden days. And now there's this, just amazing amount of information that parents can.
So give us an update. How is Austen today after such a terrible, severe
Yes.
initial report?
Yes.
First of all, how old is he?
He is 22.
22. So, and he was
Yes.
diagnosed when he was 3. There's a picture. Big,
Yes.
tall, handsome guy.
Yes.
And so how is he?
Well, he's doing great. He graduated high school with a 4.2 grade point average.
Wow.
He
That's better than I did.
Yes, he's very intelligent, and he went through years of therapy, different types of therapy. But and he had wonderful. I mean, God was just always gracious to supply the needs of wonderful therapists, and wonderful teachers, and wonderful even babysitters. One of them is here with us today. That's been our dear friend for years. People that just always, gave so much to his life to help him in different ways. His sister was an amazing teacher and model for him, because they need to model normal behavior. And I don't really particularly like the word normal, but she was a wonderful, and still is a wonderful teacher for him. But he is at our college, Valor Christian College. He's going there right now. He's a communications and media major. He has a job that he loves, and that he works at a comic store because he loves comics, and he's a real comic buff and book buff. So that's
he's
a great
probably
job for
excited
him.
about the Captain America movie that's about to come out.
Yes.
Ashton, how would you describe Austen to our viewers today?
Oh, well, there aren't words enough to describe my brother. He is, and I'm a little bit partial, but he is truly the most amazing individual. He's so gifted and talented in so many different areas. And as I mentioned before, he has a real love for literature and for reading. He's an
I wonder where he
avid
got
reader.
that from. He probably got that from Mom and Dad.
Yes, he came by that, honestly. But what really amazes me about Austen, and what I've been able to learn from him, my mom mentioned that I've been his teacher, but really it's the other way around. He's taught me about patience, and he's taught me about compassion. Because with this condition, you have to sometimes have the patience of Job, and there are things that you go through as a family, as an individual who's received this diagnosis, where you truly have to wait upon the Lord. And he has taught me how to do that, because I'm a type A personality. I like things to be happening very quickly. And so he's taught me how to just slow down and to wait on God and to watch him move. And he has in such a mighty way in Austen's life and in our lives as a family. And I just love him. He's my absolute best friend, and he probably is sitting at home right now saying, "Oh gosh, Ashton, please stop talking about me." But he's very modest.
I know
but
he loves his big sister, though.
I love sharing about Austen. I really want to encourage those of you that have any type of special needs child. I want you to be encouraged today. They really are, I'm just telling you, always a blessing. We had David Smith on with us and talking about his special needs son, and he said, Matthew said, I cannot imagine our family couldn't be complete without Matthew. And he had a lot more challenging issues than what you described with Austen. But in a minute, Joni, I'd like for you just to take a moment. It's so funny saying my name. But anyway, take a moment, and I'm going to let you encourage those moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas that are listening today. But before we do that, I know Pastor Rod is watching, and we do have to get some type of blackmail material, some story, something about
he is
him
right now cringing.
that we can tell, because he tweeted this morning. He said, y'all pray that Joni won't tell some secret, on Daystar. But now we've got Joni and Ashton up here. So funny story about Dad, Ashton. Come on.
Well,
you got to lay it out there.
In fact, recently, just this past week, he decided that he wanted to get his teeth whitened, and I guess in something about older age or becoming more mature, I guess is a better way to put it. He decided that it would be a great idea to get his teeth whitened right before we have a 3-day revival at our branch campus in Elkhart, Indiana. And I told him, I said, Dad, you can't do this right before we have this, huge weekend, and you're going to be all sensitive, and you're not going to be able to eat anything. And he decided he was going to do that. And so he came home from the appointment, and Austen was having a little get together. And so we had some pizza and things, and he kept trying to sneak and get a piece of pizza, because when you get your teeth whitened, you can't eat anything with dye in it.
Oh, yeah.
And so we kept having to kind of slap his wrist like a child almost, and say, no, you can't have any pizza. And he was kind of complaining and whining a little bit. Why can't I? And we had to keep pulling out the paperwork from the dentist saying, see, you can't have anything with red dye in it. So sometimes it's like having a third child in the house, Miss Joni would say, but he can be.
I love this. He got you, Pastor Rod. He got you today. That is so good.
He's now Ashton's responsibility on the road. She likes to travel, so she gets to babysit her dad, because he needs a lot of a lot of babysitting.
And we can kid about him for sure, but he is on the serious side an amazing man of God, and I know he's been a wonderful father to you, Ashton, and we just love him so much. He's such a blessing, and his book about the cross was such a great.
Read every word of it.
He's very passionate about winning people to the Lord, isn't he?
Yes. And we
All right,
want
so finish that, but then Joni's got to tell us a story about Rod too. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to you, Marcus and Joni, and to your family, and to the great Daystar Network for giving families like ours and ministries like ours a platform to preach the gospel. And we just so appreciate the work that you do, and we continue to pray for you always, and just believe for increase for you. So.
Thank you so much.
We do, and I thank you so much for your endorsement for the book. That meant the world to me, that you endorsed.
Okay, so tell us a Pastor Rod story.
Oh gosh, there are so many. I don't know.
Oh, so many.
And I have to go.
Wait,
Yeah,
so
there are a
many.
lot.
Let's extend this program another hour.
Yes.
Hear all the stories.
I would, oh gosh, there are a lot. And he was a really good sport, because I do make light of him in the book a lot. So, because he's...
Joni, don't you get any ideas?
Yeah, he's a slight bit needy. So
I'll help you. One of my favorite stories that she tells is the night that they met, actually, for the first time.
Yes.
So he
actually talks about it in the introduction he wrote for me, and he used to sing, which he's not very good. I hope he didn't hear. He's not really good. But he used to sing, back in the day. There was the first time I went to church, there was 30 people. And he tells the story, and I won't take all the time, but he wanted to meet me, and he had on this, I'll never forget, this peach kind of, it was 1980, so it was this peach suit, and he had his,
all the pinky rings.
Yes, he had all the
pulled out all the stops.
He had all the gold on.
I'll never let y'all come back again.
Never, ever.
Or not without him.
Yes.
Right.
You can have equal time and a rebuttal.
My goodness.
Yeah, payback is coming, I'm sure.
But yes, he did a song to impress me, and I remember saying he would probably do really well in Las Vegas, because it was very loungy, So it was. He kind of has that kind of voice. But we tease at all the singers at the church, because every now and then he'll get going and singing, and it's kind of a fun thing.
I love that. Well, right before you talk about that, will you just take about a minute, Joni, and encourage those that are watching today, and especially, in honor of Autism Day, that we really pay attention to those kids, and especially those parents that are dealing with very, very difficult issues that maybe don't have the resources that some of us have. So would you encourage them as you feel led, Joni?
Certainly. I do want to encourage you that regardless of what you don't have and what your child doesn't have, you always have hope. And as I said, hope makes every step of faith possible.
Yes.
And regardless of what you have heard and what answers you've been given. There is a greater answer because we serve a great God, and his love and love for your child is greater than anything, and he is a father before he is anything. He is a father first, and he knows the pain of watching his child hurt, and he can relate to that pain. And so my prayer for you is that you will never lose hope, that your hope will never be broken. No matter your heart can be broken, but your hope will never be broken because God is so faithful. And he is faithful and counts every tear, and he knows every heartache, and he will love you through any crisis if you look to him and hold to his unchanging hand.
Amen.
Well, that's such
good.
an encouraging word today. That's for you. Can we pray with you? Was that for you? Did that speak to your heart? Let us know. Let us love you. Let us join our faith with you. And the book, again, is entitled Tapestry of Faith. You can get it wherever books are sold. Go online to Amazon.com. You can go to the Rod Parsley, the Breakthrough Ministry. And the program Breakthrough is seen daily here on Daystar at 6:30 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then weekly Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So I encourage you to watch it. We're going to give all these prayer requests to Joni and Ashton, and we're going to ask them to lead us in prayer as we close this program. But there's still a moment in time. If you have a need, call the number today or go to daystar.com and click on prayer, and it will be our delight to pray with you. Joni and Ashton, would you lead us in prayer?
Sure. I'd love to. Father, we come before you in the name of your precious Son, Jesus.
Yes.
And we know that these are the needs of your beloved children. And you are great and you are faithful. And you're faithful to every need and to answer every cry because your children are yours and your beloved. And every need reaches your ears and reaches your heart. And that heart reaches out to every single one of these needs, whether they are great or whether they are small. Nothing is insignificant in your eyes. So we thank you. We thank you that these needs and these requests are made